Shattered Pieces by Orpheus Kidwell, Chapter 5. For once, Naruto found himself thankful he was missing his fondest ears. It was so loud, even to his less sensitive pair. He found himself in a building in Mount Glen, an old warehouse to be precise. Inside the warehouse, there were several large pieces of machinery, equipment, and vehicles that looked to be broken down due to decades of disuse. Following the noise, he found himself looking at a pair of teens working on a bullhead, trying to get it into working shape. The first had red hair and red eyes, fair skin, and a scorpion tail. The second had black hair, black eyes, a heavy tan, and a pair of bare ears atop his head. Both were wearing a blue one-piece jumpsuit and leather coveralls over that, wielding masks raised to look at their work and make sure everything was up to par. "Sasori, Kankuro, how's it going?" Naruto yelled up at them, given they were standing atop a scaffolding. The two looked down, waving as they saw him. Using aura to cushion their landing, they jumped to the ground and greeted their leader. "Good afternoon, Naruto." Sasori spoke calmly, but not coldly. It was a very formal, business-like tone. "What's going on?" Kankuro, on the other hand, spoke with the casualness that one might expect from close friends or family. "I was just wondering how that one's coming. It would be nice if we could have our own air force instead of relying on the Fang all the time." Sasori nodded and looked at the bullhead. "I think that we have enough to finish this. The insides are all in working order, thankfully. However, there's damage to the hull itself. That's what we're trying to fix. Technically, you could fly it right now. However, even the smallest hit from any dust, and it will start losing parts. That's what's taking so long. We need to check all the welding and make sure it's done correctly, as well as ensure the integrity of the panel themselves." Naruto nodded. "How long do you think?" he wondered. Kankuro was the one to answer, looking up at the aircraft before shrugging. "3 weeks, probably. Like he said, we have everything here in the warehouse to fix it. It's just a matter of the labor." The blonde smiled brightly. "That's great to hear. Keep up the great work." The two mechanics nodded before turning back to the scaffolding, ready to climb up. "Oh, and Kankuro, Tamara was looking for you. Something about makeup?" "I don't quite remember exactly." The bear faunus swallowed hard at the statement, but nodded, glad for the warning. Right. Thanks, Naruto." With that, the blonde decided to leave the warehouse. It was hell on him, even with earplugs. Walking out, he noted that he was in the warehouse district of Mount Glen. Hidan had informed him that pre-war cities looked like the kingdom capitals in most ways. Of course, Naruto hardly ever went to Vale except on missions, so that didn't help much. That said, the place he was in had dozens of large warehouses that one might rent from their owners, whether they be private banks or the government, back when it was still a city. Currently, he was having them used as storage facilities for all sorts of things they'd scavenged around the abandoned settlements. While they hadn't completely wiped out the nest of Grim here, they had contained them and cleared out a few districts for their use. As they needed access for more things, he'd have his troops take out the Grim. For now, it was good enough, seeing as how the Grim were too docile to try attacking the clan anymore. Leaving the warehouse district, Naruto found himself in downtown Mountain Glen. Once it was an area of thriving business. Now he had converted many of those shops into housing for the clan. Several of the buildings had also been renovated to become a place where his family could go to get supplies and meals. They had enough for everyone, but only if rationed. Their shares of dust certainly helped matters. His thoughts were interrupted as a shadow passed overhead. Looking up, he noted it was a bullhead. He didn't allow anxiety to overtake him, though, as his glassy eyes revealed who was on board. Instead, he just sighed. What could they want? Walking to the helipad he had repaired atop the hospital, Naruto wondered if he'd ever be free of that witch. It wasn't long until he reached the hospital itself. It was simple to take the elevator up to the top floor, then find the stairs to the roof. By the time he arrived, he noted that Cinder and Roman had disembarked from the aircraft, looking particularly unhappy. "What can the clan do for you?" Naruto asked formally to Cinder. The woman simply scowled. "The ship needs repairs thanks to an incident we had in Bell." Naruto looked at the ship curiously before seeing that the hull had taken serious damage. There were large gaps in the wings, burns all over it, and several other things even his untrained eyes could see. "What did you do to get all of that? Did you fight a drake?" "Very funny. No, it was one of the huntresses in Vale that did this. Can you help us or not?" Cinder demanded. Naruto wasn't used to seeing Cinder out of her calm, somewhat flirtatious demeanor. To be honest, he found himself liking the fact that someone ruffled her so much she was like this. "Still, just to be sure, I could, though. Where's the entourage? I'm noticing the absence of 3 pains that are usually with you." Roman snickered. Do you find yourself missing my assistant? He asked, when Naruto didn't react beyond a very infatuated darkening of his skin. Roman shrugged. Her kids have their own missions right now. Kneel while she's sleeping. Don't flare your aura too much, or the blonde shivered. Taking out his scroll, Naruto dialed the number. Hello? Sasori, hold the project for a bit. I need you to send someone up to the hospital. There's a bulkhead here that needs repairs. It's Cinder. He could hear someone sigh on the other end of the line. Okay, I'll send someone. Just make sure she's not there when they get there. Of course. Thank you. With that, he hung up and pocketed his device. All right, they're on their way. So it's time for us to find something to do so we aren't interfering when they get here. Cinder was silent, but followed Naruto from the roof. Roman tailed behind with his usual smirk in place. Naruto got the feeling he was enjoying this too. Clan HQ. The blonde found himself leading the two to his own base within Mount Glen. It was once the city's courthouse, but he'd renovated it into a sort of office space for several different purposes. The attached jailhouse still didn't see any use, but they were at war. Eventually it would. One of the courtrooms had everything removed and redone into a sort of war room, complete with the same type of holographic map display that Adam had in his own. 4 seats were taken around the map, for because that annoyance that called herself Neo had woken up and found them by following his aura. Cinder and Naruto were seated on the short ends of the table opposite each other. Roman sat on one end of the long sides, equidistant from the others. Neo, she was so close to Naruto, it was a wonder she didn't just use him as a seat. Trying his best to ignore the girl who was pressing her soft chest against him in an effort to gain his attention, Naruto looked at Cinder. So, are you going to tell me what happened? The Ravenet tapped her fingers against the table before sighing. There were complications with one of our raids. Since there had been so little resistance and I have other things for the Fang to do, we had been hiring juniors men for them. Unfortunately, on the last one of the nights, there was something we hadn't anticipated. She placed her scroll on the table and a holographic feed showed. I had one of my people hack into the security cam so I could see it for myself. This girl in the hood, she's wielding that scythe with the skills of an addict. Pulling her files, I found her name is Ruby Rose, daughter of Taiyang Xiaolong, and Summer Rose, student of Crow Bronwyn. She has huntsman blood running deep in her veins. The men were no match for her. Is that an acceleration type semblance? Naruto asked, watching as she disappeared several times in clouds of rose petals. Activating his all-seeing eye and first spark together, he watched the video very clearly. Yeah, it's an acceleration type, not teleportation type. So this girl took out the goons? That doesn't explain the ship though. I mean, she could have probably taken on Roman, but I don't see Neo losing to an amateur. Her moves aren't refined enough to be a licensed huntsman. With his comment, he saw Roman scowl, but no other response. Neo, on the other hand, began to practically purr at the compliment to her skill. Naruto thinks I'm skilled. Thank you, darling, she cooed into his ear, causing the boy to fight off a blush at the hot breath against his neck. You don't have to fight it. Whenever you're ready, I'll show you things that will make your mind turn to mush in the best ways. Shaking the temperature's voice from his head, he looked at the hologram as the feed changed to a different camera. Oh, Goodwitch showed up, he muttered. The damage made sense now. While he'd never personally seen Goodwitch, he'd read plenty on the files of dangerous huntmen and huntresses in Vale or known to visit Vale frequently so that he could counter them if need be, or steal their souls in case of why Kurama was so interested. Looking at the battle, he chuckled. She's just on a whole different level, isn't she? I guess you don't become the deputy headmaster of the best academy without the skills. All right, I think I get what happened. You look like you have some insight, Cinder commented, her demeanor slowly changing back to normal. Oh well, it was good while it lasted. Please share. Well, it's just a guess. Goodwitch is known to never stray far from Ospen unless on a mission or attending to the academy. Yet she was there and arrived just in time to save this Ruby, was it? Yeah, just in time to save Ruby. The way we see it, there's only 3 possibilities. On the word we, Cinder seemed confused until she seemingly remembered his condition. The first is all of this is a coincidence. It's possible, but not that likely. Second, Ospen had her tell to keep an eye on her. Given her pedigree, it's more possible. But why scout someone that's 2 years younger than the rest of your students? Lastly, somehow he knew that you would be hitting that shop and had Witch waiting to apprehend you. Cinder frowned at what Naruto said. While he was just a boy, Yami had been amongst the most trusted strategists amongst the valiant White Fang before she arrived. If Naruto, Yami, and Kurama had all decided it had discussed it in his head, then it was likely one of them was correct. There was also the fact that she couldn't see any other possible routes, so she had to take what she had. If we're looking at the scenario where he knew what we were doing and planned a counter-strike, it might be good to lay low for a time. We have quite a supply of dust amassed and can focus on some of the other plans for now anyways. Still, the second possibility intrigues me. Cinder looked at the screen, which had been paused on a frame showing the girl's face. What could Aspen see in this girl that we're missing? Several hours later, Nato found himself walking the sundown streets of Mount Glen, stepping around large holes in the asphalt and over toppled structures. His guesses were still at his base, but had occupied themselves elsewhere. Robin had found himself interested in the mess hall, given he hadn't eaten in quite some time, and thievery creates quite the appetite, as he had informed the blonde. Cinder was, who knows where, that woman was too curious for her own good, so he imagined she was snooping in places she had no business. Still, chain of command and all that. Then there was Neil. She was still with him, following him down the street. He wasn't necessarily trying to give her the slip, but it might be nice. You're weird, you know that? Kurma's voice resounded in his head, amusing more than anything else. All you want is family, affection, and someone to rely on. That's why we're here, and you've got this girl who's throwing herself at you. You're really odd. Kurma isn't wrong, you know. I find it strange as well, Yami piped in. I can't detect any sort of malicious intent, and unlike Anko, it's not teasing. I believe she may have some affection for you outside of that lust. I'm not saying to take up her offer on that, but it might not be so bad to have another friend. Just keep her away from Hidan. Sign at the instances of the other two. Naruto slowed down a bit, allowing Neo to catch up. It was although, unlike he was used to, she hadn't immediately latched onto him when they were alone. Instead, she just followed him, arms outstretched to keep her balance as she walked on the edge of the sidewalk. Neo, what are you doing? He wondered as she looked at him. He was interested in the fact that her eyes were different. Wasn't it that her brown eye and pink eye were on the opposite sides before? Ignoring it for now, he watched as she grinned. Silly Naru. The floor is lava, she stated as she struck her tongue out. Naruto jumped to the sidewalk as suddenly the asphalt was lava, or at least it had the appearance of it. Turning on his all-seeing eyes, he noted that the asphalt was brimming with Neo's aura, an illusion-type semblance. I didn't take Neo for that kind of person. Given aura was the externalization of one's soul, it made sense that one's soul had a large effect on both their aura and their semblance. One semblance could be thought of to be the way that their soul protected the body. Semblance could be divided into several different types based on several factors, but illusion type holders seem to share on very particular traits in common. They shared an immense fear when they activated their semblance, not just fear, but rather a type of terror that enveloped in their entire being. A sadistic, flirty, and possessive Neo just didn't seem the type to have that sort of childhood trauma. Putting the thought aside, Naruto decided to play along. The floor is lava, you say? Can't we just use water or ice dust then? He asked, not surprised when she shook her head. Why not? It's special lava. You just have to stay away from it. As she said that, the grass near the sidewalk changed as well, slowly encroaching on the sidewalk. And stepping onto the edge of the sidewalk, Naruto smiled slowly. When it had been some time since he'd played with anyone, surely he could take a break. If it's lava, shouldn't we get to high ground? He asked, pointing at a street light above them. Neo nodded and jumped up, expertly flipping onto it in a show of acrobatic skill. Naruto, on the other hand, used his first spark to enhance his leg muscles enough that he could jump straight to it. As he looked at the floor, the lava had closed over the sidewalk. The illusion was disrupting a little when he noticed it was only around them, but he wouldn't mention that. Neo seemed to be different right now. He wasn't sure what had caused it, but it seemed fun. Where next, Naru? She asked. Naruto looked around before pointing to the rooftop of one of the shops that they didn't use. I don't think I can jump that far, she pointed out. Naruto smiled and grabbed her hand, watching as Neo blushed heavily. After everything she'd done to him, that's all it took to get her embarrassed. He felt a little disappointed, but filed that away for later as he jumped from the light, Neo in tow. When it was obvious that he couldn't quite make it, Naruto concentrated. His aura flashed an almost white shade of light gray before the air around them swirled and lifted them up higher. It was just enough for them to land on the roof. Neil looking at Naruto in amazement. Oh, what was that? She wondered, her voice sounding downright childish in its innocent curiosity at this point. That was Boris. It lets me control air, but whenever I use it drains the heat out of an area. For some reason, I only use it in short bursts, otherwise things start to turn to ice. He explained. To be honest, things were getting a little out of hand at this point. Neil, I have to ask, are you okay? You seem different. The girl tilted her head in curiosity before her eyes lit up. Oh, you didn't know already? And she wondered, having no idea what she meant. He shook his head as he watched one of her eyes turn white and her voice changed. He couldn't quite place it, but it seemed almost frail. It was like all the fear in the world was thrust upon one person. I'm just like you. Again, her eyes changed. This time it was the one he met first, the eyes that matched her hair but were inverted in position. This was the forward laying a gloved hand on his face. We're the same, Naruto. And it was then that Naruto finally understood. Was this why those two were so insistent? He couldn't even finish it, but Neo helped him by whispering in his ears, I'm broken, just like you. End of chapter 5. Shattered Pieces by Orpheus Kidwell, Chapter 6. 6 years ago, 8-year-old Naruto jerked from his sleep as he sat upright looking around. Where am I? He thought, only a step outside, panicking as his breath began to quicken. When he felt someone touching him, he immediately jumped back, falling out of bed. The girl looked upset, but he didn't register that as he tried to move backwards, putting as much space between her and himself as he could. No, please, no more, he begged as he felt his back against the wall. Nowhere else to go. Hugging his knees, he tucked his face into his legs and just waited. Waited for the injection, or the scalpel, or the blade. It was different sometimes, but one thing that remained constant was the pain. The shaky voice that responded. It wasn't what he usually heard. Oh, Dust, what did they do to you? Naruto looked up to see a girl. Wasn't that the girl who... Her name was Blake, right? She was knelt in front of him, tears brimming her eyes. When Cerulean met Amber, it must have been too much for the girl as she suddenly wrapped him up in a hug, squeezing him close, even though it wasn't painful. The blonde found himself crying just as much as her. For several minutes it lasted, or maybe it was hours. Naruto had no way of knowing. Even when the tears stopped, he didn't dare let go of Blake. He was afraid. He was terrified that if he let go, Orochimaru or Kabuto would show up for another round of tests. Blake seemed to be holding him just as tightly, though he didn't think it was for the same reason. I'm sorry, Naruto finally whispered once he got control of his voice. Blake froze before pulling back just enough to look in his eyes. She seemed upset at what he said. You have nothing to be sorry for, Blake responded, just as the thought of this boy apologizing to her for anything was ludicrous. I do, though. I'm sorry for making you cry, he replied, looking at the ground. I'm sorry for being so weak. Strangers had to save me. I'm sorry you had to worry over someone who's broken. The last one, he stated, when he remembered the things the scientists called him. He was the broken one, the one who could heal anything except for his own fondness trait. He may as well have been nothing more than a tainted human to them. Blake's surprise turned to worry as she went to stroke the boy's hair. She was shocked when he pulled back and fell to the floor to get her to stop. No, not there, he begged her, eyes tearing up at the thought of his savior knowing he was damaged goods. Blake's surprise gave way to understanding as she nodded. Naruto kept his hands on his head, where his ears used to be, as he noticed the girl's own ears twitched. Seeing it put a pit in his stomach. He'd never have that. Looking at the ground, he felt those tears spill over and began to cry all over again. Even though she wasn't crying this time, Blake held him just as tightly as before, rubbing his back to soothing. It's okay, Naruto. I'm here. I'll always be here for you. Present day. Memories flooded Naruto as he heard Nero's words. He couldn't move under the weight of them. The first time he was held by Blake, Adam teaching him to fight, introducing his other selves to his siblings, getting his first medical lessons from Dr. Nohara, going on his first mission, the first time Kurama killed, and the very different reactions that Blake and Adam had, making friends with the clan and becoming their unofficial leader. They just began peeling up after another, and still he didn't move. No, I'm not broken, Naruto denied, shaking his head, and Neo's raspy yet sultry voice chimed in response. No, you're perfect, my love, she whispered in his ears. To me, you're absolutely perfect. To others, though, they don't understand us. They always leave. She continued to stroke his cheek while spinning her words. Your clan, they seem different. That's only because they're broken too enough. I've experienced on by that mad scientist. They're just as shattered as we are. That's why they stick so closely together. They're trying to create something from broken pieces, a mosaic of hundreds of shards from hundreds of objects. They want something beautiful to come from all their pain, and they've given you the role of artist. They want you to take all their pieces and arrange something magnificent. The blonde took in what she said and had to admit that she had some point. They weren't normal. The clans stuck together because they had shared a common pain, Orochimaru. It made them closer, but also made the other Fang stay far away from them. And they were different from other Faunus. As she watched his face move through several emotions, Neil smiled. She was getting through to him. That's what your family is doing, coming together and creating something they never could alone. She cupped the younger boy's face in her hands as she looked into his eyes. His cerulean orbs met her dichromatic ones, and resistance nearly gone. Can you say it would be so bad to see if we could do the same? She wondered as her lips were so close to his. The smallest breeze would have brought them together. He looked to the side, a blush coating his cheeks at the thought. Taking the chance, she leaned forward and their lips finally met. She kept it chaste. She wouldn't very well have her love broken more than he was already. Now could she? The boy fell into it, closing his eyes and just wrapping his arms around the girl who claimed they would fix each other. For his part, Naruto couldn't resist anymore. Blake was gone. Adam was under Cinder's thumb. His clan had to rely on him. It was all too much. He just needed something to distract him, needed to feel someone close to him, like how Blake held him when he was younger. He didn't want to think of this girl as Blake's replacement. No one could ever replace his Nichan. But he had been nothing but caring towards him since they met. He could at least give it a chance, right? After all, it was as Adam once told him, Naruto, I know that normally humans and faunas tend to frown on certain things down by children. You must destroy those notions. However, we are at war, and any one of us could die any day. You've proved to me you're mature enough to take the life of another. At this point, Adam had set two glasses on his desk and poured a drink into them. Old enough to kill, old enough to drink, old enough to do anything. Blake may dislike it, but you should at least remember this rule. It's what my father told me back when I made my first kill. Go ahead and drink it, Naruto. You may not like it, but at least have one drink with your big brother. The smile that Adam wore was so sincere that Naruto complied. Drinking, he was pretty sure this fell under the old enough to do anything category. At this point, he didn't care the several years age difference between him and Neo. He just enjoyed the contact and the affection she was showing him. He hadn't been this close to anyone since Blake left, and he missed it terribly. When Neo pulled back, he actually found himself feeling disappointed. Such a cute face, Naruto, Neo stated with a grin. Don't worry. We can do plenty of things later. Slowly, her right hand traced down his body until it rested on his chest, her other one still on his cheek. For now, I think one step at a time is best. If you get too attached, you won't be able to properly lead your clan. Neo's scroll then began ringing, making her frown as she picked it up. Hello? Slowly the girl's eyes narrowed until her demeanor was practically homicidal. Fine, fine. Hanging up, she fumed before looking at Naruto. It seems I must leave. My love, it seems I'll see if I can visit you. I'll least expect it. I'll miss you though. With that, the girl's form shattered like glass, leaving the boy all alone on the rooftop. For several seconds, he stared where the girl had once been. Before shaking himself from his stupor, he quickly realized that she must have been called by Roman or Cinder, and that the bulkhead was repaired. That meant that Cinder would be leaving as well. It was strange to feel both relieved and sad at the group's leave. He needed to talk to someone about this. But who? Kurma was laughing too hard to be of use, while Yami piped in that he didn't understand these sort of things. He was loyal, but a bit hard to understand most of the time. Uncle might be helpful, but there was no telling. Wait, there was her. Yeah, she'd probably be able to help. With that in mind, Nato left, sparks trailing his body and eyes a glassy blue as he searched out someone he could trust to help without judging him too much. After all, she had to deal with Shika, so he was sure he could rely on her. Sabaku House. When Naruto's knock at the Sabaku household, which was once an antique shop, was answered by Gaara, he wasn't all surprised. The boy was 2 years younger than him and had short, red hair, pale skin, and large bags under his pale green eyes. Even without his raccoon tail, he had the appearance of a faunus. He wore a brown cloak over his body that hid his clothing, and behind him floated a cloud of sand in the form of an almost peanut-like shape. Hello, Naruto. How may I help you? The boy spoke very formally, even bowing his head as he spoke the blonde's name. Agar, is Tamari in? By chance, I had something I need to discuss with her. Before the boy could even answer, the blonde showed up behind him, though her hair was far closer to brown than his sun gold shade. Done up in four hairs, she wore a black yukata and looked at him with curious teal eyes. Is this another mission? The woman, Tamari wondered. Naruto shook his head, which caused the girl to become even more curious. Oh, I needed some advice, he explained. Gaara took that as a cue and nodded, leaving out the front door and past Naruto. I wish to go for a walk anyways. I shall leave you alone. Before Naruto could reply, the boy was already gone. This prompted Temari to pull him in, shut the door, and sit him on the couch. Luckily for you, I just made tea. Shikamaru was supposed to be coming, but some things came up, those things being his mother. She sighed, but shook her head before going into the kitchen. In no time, she came back with two cups in her hand, placing one in front of her leader as she sipped from the other, sitting down across from him. Now tell me, Naruto, what have you gotten yourself into? Her sly smile told him nothing except that she was probably close to figuring it out herself. You only ever come to me when you're completely confused on something. I truly don't mind helping, but it makes me curious what you could have done this time. Naruto paused, trying to think of the best way to move forward. The truth is, I'm all alone, he finally exclaimed. Tamara quirked an eyebrow, not at all expecting this. Everyone in the clan is great, but I feel alone. I have ever since Blake left, since Cinder took over, and Nissan has had left time for me. Since we came here, I love being around all of you. Honest, I don't like feeling so far away from them. Tamara sipped her tea momentarily before nodding. I think I see what your problem is. Blake and Adam saved you, and you devoted everything to make them happy. But now that you've left the nest, so to speak, you miss them. Naruto nodded. Tamara placed her cup down and seemed to be lost in thought. I'm not sure I'm the best person to tell you what to do from here, given the only people I think of in the same way are my brothers, and they haven't become independent enough to leave yet. Naruto shook his head. That's not what I wanted your advice on. It was just something I needed to say for you to understand the next part. This certainly got Tamara's attention. I think I might have found someone who can help distract me from the pain, even if only for a little bit. Tamara's eyes lit up immediately. Is our great leader in love? She asked with a sly grin, causing Naruto to blush furiously. It's not like that, Tamari, he denied. Calming a bit, he started fidgeting. Okay, maybe a little, but maybe not. I don't know what I feel. She's always been nice to me and she's pretty, but she's a bit psychotic like Kurama. She hasn't made me do anything I didn't want to do and even said she'd wait for me to be ready, but it's all so confusing. I thought she was annoying at first, but I've just been so alone that now I'm sad she left. The oldest of the Sabaku siblings thought a moment before smiling. Oh, it's her. I think I see now. Naruto looked at the older girl, wondering what she was thinking. It's Roman's assistant, right? Neil. She's just like you, so it makes sense that you would feel this way. To be honest, the boy was downright amazed she had figured it out so fast. Why you choose me to ask about matters of love, I don't know, but I'll help if I can. Naruto smiled. Thank you, Tamari. I wanted to ask you because you seem to be doing very well with Shikamaru despite your differences. Tamara pondered what he said before nodding. I see. If a couple like if Shika and I can work past our differences, then perhaps it means you have a shot at happiness with someone like Neil. Naruto nodded. Tamara smiled, glad that her leader put some faith in her opinions and advice. All right, I'll try my best to help you. Naruto grinned, finally taking a sip of Tamari's tea. Thank you, Tamari. It really means a lot to me. Cinder's bullhead storage bay. While Romid and Cinder had taken seats in the cockpit, Neil found herself in the storage bay of the ship, a happy grin on her lips. She couldn't stop pacing the mostly empty area as she had a sort of internal dialogue about everything so far. He actually accepted and kissed us back. I can't believe you went with it. I was so scared he was going to pull away. You should have more faith in me, Neil. Neil's more sadistic voice responded. I know what I'm doing after all. You were just as terrified, Bree. Don't act so arrogant. I could tell even if she didn't notice. Shut up, Cream. Don't make me get the umbrella on you. That would just hurt Neil and you know it. Screw you. Meanwhile, Neil was smiling wide, both eyes wide as she held one hand over her chest. Neil, as they called her, was out and trying to control herself as the blush spread over her face. Just remember the events. He actually accepted us, she breathed, smile getting wider every second until it threatened to split her face. He accepted us. Despite the emotions behind it, her voice amounted to little more than a loud whisper, wincing and rubbing her throat. Even the pain wasn't enough to stop her from grinning like a love-struck schoolgirl, holding herself close as she remembered the rooftop. Neil even giggled a little. Someone's happy. Hearing someone else, Neil jumped in, allowed Bree, her more psychotic personality, to take over. The response was to immediately pull out her umbrella and point it at the new arrival. Neil lowered as she saw it was Cinder. I suppose you're basking in the glow of that little session with your boy toy, huh? Neil narrowed her eyes silently. The woman smiled. You didn't think I wouldn't have eyes on all of my operatives at all times, did you? No, do not worry. I know everything that my followers do, especially behind closed doors. However, your little courtship of Naruto works well for me. I'm not going to interfere. In fact, I think I can find it within myself to aid you. Neo glared at the woman, all her defenses up and alarms going off. Why? Her question curt and to the point, all her suspicion in the word. Cinder smiled at that sly smile only she could. Why? I thought it was obvious. Even if Adam was useful for his high rank and connection to Sienna Khan, I found myself less and less interested in him. Naruto, on the other hand, his power is incredible. Of course, I'm sure you already knew that. It's why you wanted him, right? Don't worry, I know all about your crush, your obsession, you need for him. I'm going to let you have him, even if I was interested in him myself. No, my mistress has plans for that boy, and you shall help us make sure they go through. Neil, my dear, you are going to replace that boy's precious savior and have him so enamored with you that he'll do everything you say once I'm finished. Neil couldn't help but step back when Cinder flared her aura, dropping her parasol at the immense weight of it. And you are going to do everything I say in exchange. End of chapter 6.